Anita, how's your mental health?
Questionable at all times. You know this.
Yeah, how's the mental health of your children?
Also a little bit tricky. Can I tell you my experience in trying to find therapists for myself and my kids, Mel?
Yes, please.
Okay, this is how it goes. You ask around your friends and your family for a referral for somebody who's nearby. You finally find somebody who sounds like they might work for your family. You give them a call and you find out that A, they're not accepting new patients, or B, they have a huge wait list. So you start over again and you ask people if they know anybody who would be a good therapist and a good fit. Finally, you find one, you go and you meet with them and you figure out that you don't actually like them that much. But it's been so much work to find somebody who you can go to in your area that you're kind of stuck with them. Well, do you have any ideas for how to get around this?
I do, because guess what? I've actually had some therapists that I have found on my own, which involves what you're saying. Sometimes I remember one time I was like 3 hours in the bathtub on my phone looking
Yeah.
through websites. I was such a prune at the end. But I have also had the experience with working with BetterHelp. And it was like, I don't want to say too good to be true, but because it is true, but it's like amazing because I was matched with my therapist within 24 hours.
And you didn't have to go through all of that other ridiculous process of trying to find somebody. And here's the cool thing too, is if that person didn't work out for you, you can just switch and say, and it's not like you're committing to another years long search for somebody who you're going to jive with.
It's true. And I lucked out, or maybe just BetterHelp is really good at matching people together because I never had to change my therapist. I loved her. Perfect fit for me. And I know that some of our friends have used BetterHelp and they've had to change therapists, and boom, same day, you can change.
Easy peasy.
You can ghost your therapist. Get a new one.
I love this idea. BetterHelp is one of our sponsors. If you use our promo code trybetterhelp.com/WWDN, you get 10% off your first month. And we totally recommend it.
Yes, get some therapy. That's trybetterhelp.com/WWDN. Hi, Anita.
Hi, you're wearing your taco jammies?
Yep, you know it, and I have not changed in 3 days.
So the taco jammies are doing you solid now.
They're tacos with hot sauce.
Yeah, because who wants a taco without hot sauce?
Not me.
Welcome back to the world of the living. Tell us about your week because you had a momentous occasion.
Holy smokes. Yes. So our episode that we are about to hear was recorded a few weeks ago, but it's about legacy, continuing on the legacy of your dead person. And so during that, I came up with an idea to honor Scott because Scott's death day was November 6th, which was just a couple days ago. So what I ended up doing, and this was inspired by what our conversation was with Joy, the fancy lady, is I wanted to do something to continue Scott's memory, but that was doable for me. So what I did is I contacted a friend that was a good friend of Scott's in the theater community, and my friend too. And she asked a couple of his really good theater friends to submit a little story about Scott and sing 16 bars of a song that meant something to him. And then they emailed me their files and I compiled a video, and that was it. And so it was something I could do because I put it out on the internet and it didn't require showing up somewhere. But it really was able to reach a lot of people, so that was nice.
I can't believe you did that so fast. I thought that was in the works for longer than that. I didn't know it was so quick.
Well, last week was super crazy too because I actually flew to New York to help one of my friends deliver her puppies that she's a breeder of, and then I had to pick up some remaining stuff from where I was living. And that friend actually that I was living with before, she has a nonprofit that is called Artists Striving to End Poverty, and it does exactly what Scott would have loved to have done if he had not died, with a nonprofit situation. And so I linked that to the video that I made, and they got a couple $100 of donation. So there you go. That was my hybrid way of honoring Scott, where it was doable for me and also helped other people. And guess what else?
What else?
I visited Ileana Bell, our widow friend, while I was in New York, and I was able to give her her widow bingo prize. So that was fun. Yeah, she's awesome. It was fun to see her.
How was actual death day for you? It's third year of Death Day.
Yeah, this is my 3rd year of Death Day. Man, the week was so busy. I think for me traveling and coming back and then putting the video together. I put it together, I want to say, in a couple hours, and it was the night before the Death Day. So I didn't really have time to feel anything until I started putting it together. And then there's a part in there where there's footage of Scott singing.
Oh, I love that so much, Mel.
Thanks.
I did. I was so happy to see that because I've always been like, I would have loved to hear Scott sing. So when that was in there, I was like, oh, my heart. And it was sad and it was happy all in one.
I know, right?
You know? And then you're like, stupid. Why is somebody who was so talented dead?
I know. And the kid that was in the video with him, his video that was current was at the first of the little video. And so it's, been a couple of years, but it was fun to hear his memories of Scott and then to see how he's grown. And that's one of the kids that he's impacted. And it's like, that's exactly what Scott was all about. So yeah, I started having feelings when I was putting it together, and then I was mad that I was having feelings. And then I had to remind myself it's normal to have feelings because this is a big, sad, traumatic thing and it's going to happen. So I felt a little kind of funny before I went to bed on Deathiversary Eve. Then I woke up.
Did Santa Claus visit you?
No, kind of actually. Yeah, Santa Claus named Anita.
Or the Grim Reaper. Is the Grim Reaper who should come on Deathiversary's Eve?
I don't know, maybe.
Kind of, I think so. And he should bring you gifts.
He should. Gifts of skulls and things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got some really delicious salty treats from you. And then a couple other friends brought some stuff by. And that was nice because it was a surprise. I think, and it took me back to the time, right after your person dies and everybody's bringing you stuff.
Yeah.
And you feel bad. I was like, oh yeah, this is what it was like to get stuff, even though it was on a smaller scale. But it was so nice of everyone to think of me. So thank you. And thanks, Anita.
You're welcome. BTW, those salt and vinegar almonds are so yummy.
Oh, they're so good. I love those.
I ate the whole tin of them because I bought some for me too. And I was like, you can't eat these fast. They're like $4 a tin. You can't eat them all in one minute. You have to.
And if you have too many, then they kind of cut your mouth.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
But so I woke up on his death day and I had to teach super early, like 7. And I taught all the way. I know, I teach on Fridays really early. And I taught all the way till 11. And so I just was like in the moment doing the task at hand. And then after that happened, I had posted the video already. And then it was time to pack for my little outing that I had planned for myself. And then I started feeling the grief. So, I mean, it did come. I didn't know if it was going to come or not. But yeah, I started feeling kind of like a sliver of how it felt when he died. Like I was exhausted and I laid down in my bed and then I realized, oh yeah, I was laying here that whole day in the same spot in this bed in our house. And so kind of had some memories like that. And then I made the mistake of going to the pet store and now my dog has a lot of outfits again. But what I planned for myself for this Deathiversary was to go, I got an Airbnb and one of my friends went with me and it was a place that was close enough to drive to so we would have an okay amount of time there, but it was dog friendly. It was in the mountains, so it was away from chaos. And
it was dog friendly because of that carpet.
I know, right?
Sure what happened to that carpet?
It was so cool. It was
like boom chicka wow wow.
It's totally from the 50s. Everything was
that was the 70s, what I just did.
I mean, not even mid-century modern. It was mid-century. So it was pretty cool. And it was fun. And I didn't get out of bed. Well, I got out of bed and I went to the couch. But the reason why I'm wearing this taco outfit that Anita's talking about is because I just got up to my little retreat and I didn't do a thing. And it was great. And it was exactly what I needed. And I just kind of was a blob and ate food.
A taco blob.
And I got back 2 hours ago, so here we are.
Here we are, together again.
Yeah. I'm glad that you liked Scott's video, so thanks for saying that.
Yeah, I was like, Mel wins the Deathiversary prize, because it was amazing, and it was so, I just thought it was touching.
Thank
I
you.
don't like that word, but
The thing that's so great about the theater community is they're used to doing stuff like that pretty quickly. And so for me, I just was thinking, oh, well, it just took like 2 hours to kind of edit together. Like, that's no big deal. But when you see the finished product, it's like, did you work on that for a couple weeks? So
yeah, I thought for sure it had been in the works for a while. So my big news this week is two things.
What?
Number one is that I ripped out all my floor and I'm putting down new floor. So we're back into chaos, which I love. Oh, and my 4-year-old just knocked on the door and said, I'm trying to give you a hug.
Oh,
I know, he's a sweetie pie, but also I think he is tricking me. And the second thing that happened was that we got the dreaded phone call from the junior high. Dun, dun, dun! Saying that my daughter had been exposed to COVID at school, and so she has to quarantine. So she has been living in the basement away from society for the last few days.
oh my gosh.
Yeah. Her BFF, this happened to her last week where she was exposed. So she had to stay home from school and she had to do all her schoolwork and then had to get tested. And then it happened to her like 3 days after she got cleared. She had another exposure. So she hasn't been to school in like 2 weeks.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. We live in weird times, man.
So I have a question. What does she have to do for band homework if she's not there?
I don't know. Am I supposed to pay attention to her schooling?
Oh, I mean, I guess not.
I think that when they were doing like the hybrid thing, she had to videotape herself. Like she had to keep track of her practice hours, and then for their tests, quote unquote, they would just videotape themselves and send it to the teacher. So,
Got it.
I think that their band is suffering quite a bit. I think it's very hard to learn an instrument with this kind of a methodology. However, they won't tell you where the exposure came from for patient privacy reasons or whatever, but they have all, text messaged each other, and they think that the exposure actually came from band.
Really?
Yes. Because the different people who also got the phone call, and then the girl who was missing from class, after that day. So they're all being, like private investigators.
They're doing intel.
Yeah, but I have no idea if they're right. But that was their theory. So I don't know. She doesn't have any symptoms, so I think we just have to ride it out, and then she can go back to school.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Anita, I am impressed that you're ripping out your floor because you've already remodeled your kitchen.
Yeah, that was terrible. This has not been as terrible. It's like every transition is awful while you're going through it, and then when you're done with it, you're like, I'm so glad I did that.
Right?
But I also have been going through everything in my house and getting rid of stuff. So I took like an entire truckload of stuff to it's like a Goodwill local store that we have here. And I took it and I was like so happy to get rid of all that stuff because we just need less stuff to be on the floor, honestly. So, and I even was able to take some of Jason's stuff and give it away, which is not happened until recently.
Ooh, good job.
I threw away his contact solution that expired, 2 years ago. Figured I didn't need that anymore since I don't wear contacts.
I think I have a box of Scott's stuff like that in the corner somewhere. And every time I get to it, I'm like, what is this? And then I open it and I'm like, oh, I can't do that yet. Even though I've done everything else.
Yeah.
Moved 3 times.
I'm so weird about stuff. So, I don't know. Do you have this same thing, Mel? Like, okay. So Jason had a book and it's an encyclopedia of comic book characters or something like that. And my boys love to look through it. Well, my 4-year-old ripped one of the pages and I get like filled with rage when something that he owned gets destroyed. Right? And then I think about it and I say to myself, okay, it's not that big of a deal. This is just an object. It's not Jason. It's not, but I have this weird attachment to his things. Like somehow they keep him here, even though they really don't. Do you have that same thing? I feel like you're not attached to stuff like I am in that same way.
I don't feel like I'm attached to stuff really anyway so much. And I remember noticing that when I was going through Scott's stuff. It's just like, okay, it would be cool to keep a couple things, but then I'm like, what am I going to do with it? And he had a lot of stuff because every show he did, if he was a director, they gave you all this stuff and you got all your cast notes. And And I'm just, I don't know. I think at the time I just didn't have energy to deal with it. And I still don't have energy to deal with it. So that's why I don't care. And also I didn't have as much time with him too. So I kind of felt like certain things were maybe his parents. And I remember thinking, should I give this to them? Is this something that they need? I don't know.
I just feel really weird about it. It was actually really freeing. I was looking through all of our bookshelves and I was like, well, I don't need how to teach young adults literature. So I don't even have to wonder if I should keep this book. No, never am I going to need to know, all these books from his schooling. So I just got rid of all of those and I didn't feel bad about that. But it's like the things that he really enjoyed and liked, I feel this very protective, weird feeling about that.
Do you think part of it too is that you want to have stuff to pass on to your kids?
I don't know.
Or is it just a big blob right now and you don't know?
I just feel like it's irreplaceable. There's not going to be another book that is his favorite book. So this is it. And so if it gets destroyed, it's gone and it will never be, regenerated.
That's the thing that's so hard. It's because like your stuff from that person is limited. Even when I was putting together Scott's little movie thing, I kept thinking, oh man, I hope people are understanding that the reason why there are so many wedding pictures of us in there are because that's really all I have. Because then he died. There's an end. And yeah, so I think certain things where there's an end to it, you want to hang on to those a little bit more. Totally understandable.
Well, and so my youngest child knocked a picture off of the wall and the frame and the glass broke and I lost it on him. And then after I calmed down, I was yelling at him. I was like, we don't get any more pictures with Dad. This is it. And then I was like, but the photo isn't ruined. So I don't know why my reaction was so violent because you can buy a new frame, you can buy new glass, but it's like symbolic almost. Like the things that he's in are sacred and need to be protected and they are not to be effed with. So, sorry,
oh, it's
Mom.
so hard. Okay, Anita, it's time to shout out our patrons.
Thank you, patrons. We love you all.
First of all, we have got our dead husband, David Kelly.
Then we have the real favorite sister,
whose name shall never be known.
She's not an evil wizard, I promise.
Sarah Morris.
Marjorie Lewis. Sometimes we assume that unless we had a huge life insurance payout, we don't really need to know anything about investments or even finances. But guess what? A little knowledge of finances is critical for all of us. Maybe your partner was in charge of that stuff, and now you find yourself making all the decisions. Maybe you're mad about that. Maybe I am. Nicole from the He's Gone But the Money's Not podcast is here to help. She tackles financial literacy by telling the stories of women and widows and finance experts and shares the lessons they've learned as certified financial planners. Whether you know a lot and feel confident in your financial decisions or feel unsure about all of that stuff, there is more to learn. Listen and subscribe to the He's Gone But the Money's Not podcast on all podcast platforms. This ad was paid for by Rockhouse Financial, an SEC registered investment advisor.
Diana Becker.
Wendy Black.
Christine Anderson.
Ashley Hahn.
Jenny Barrow.
Kara Scara.
Yes. Aaron Posick.
Jenny Taylor, who also had a death day.
Yes. Gabe Lozano.
My mother.
No, you're not just going to say her name.
No.
Anna Tracy.
Mel's mother.
Ileana Bell, who I just visited. Hi, Ileana Bell.
Karen Cornejo. The Winehouse.
Rachel Barbosa.
And that's them.
Thank you for supporting us on Patreon. If you are not our patron yet, please join us at patreon.com/WWDN. There are 4 different tiers that range anywhere from $5 a month to help us with the nuts and bolts of the podcast, all the way up to the dead husband.
$1 million. Oh,
yes!
Wait, we haven't started that one yet.
No, but maybe the fancy lady can.
Remember to check out the Widow Wives Club. We are getting close to having enough orders to order our t-shirts, and we'll be sending those out as soon as we can do that.
Okay, what's up next, Anita?
It's round 3 with the fancy lady. We're going to talk about some fun new stuff with her.
All right, stay tuned. I'm not Anita.
And I'm not Mel, and we're 2 young widows trying to figure out
Widow we do now.
Okay, are you guys ready? It's part 3 of the fancy lady. So we had our first meeting, or our first podcast, where we just talked about her story. We learned a little bit about her, some of the things she's learned. In our second podcast, if you guys missed it and you need to go back and listen to it, we talked about some financial guidance and avoiding making huge mistakes. For our third podcast with Joy, she is going to impart another piece of her long widow knowledge to us.
And this is actually one of the ways that she is the most fancy.
So when we first had a Zoom call with Joy just to meet her and talk about some ideas for the podcast, there were so many ideas that we had, so many things that she could have given us instruction or information on. And so we came down to 3 topics. And the third topic that we wanted to discuss with her was creating a legacy for your deceased person, which I think we can all relate to, having a need or feeling a need to keep their memory alive in some way, and how to go about doing that, and some ideas for doing that. So that's what we're going to discuss today.
Welcome back, Joy, Miss Fancy.
Thank you, ladies. It's always fun to hang out with y'all for a few hours.
Are you wearing your sash?
And my crown.
Yes.
I'm kind of bummed out that it's our third interview. I wish we had like 50 of them.
Well, can't we just keep hanging out anyway?
Sure. Once we get to be as fancy as you, then yes. I feel like we're not worthy.
I just have to actually pay attention to the reminders on my phone and get on the Zoom call at the right time.
Okay, I just would like to say I set a reminder for 24 hours and then I set a reminder for 1 hour.
I didn't get the 1 hour reminder, and I just looked back at my phone to see, and it didn't come through, so I feel a little vindicated. Like,
I should have just told you, but...
What about electrical shock? Have y'all thought about integrating?
I think maybe what she needs is like a spray bottle of water. You know how you use those to train
like a dog,
dogs?
like you'd use on a dog to attack you?
She can like spray me in the face, but she'd have to get close to me, and that's not happening right now.
Well, anyway, welcome, Joy. After we could get our crap together and get on the same call, you were, of course, ready and waiting. So
you two are like not in each other's safe circles. I mean, with this COVID stuff going on, surely you two don't have to like socially distance. You're within the circle of love.
Yes, except for that I started feeling sick yesterday, and so I'm not in anybody's circle of love right now. But I think I'm okay. I'm feeling a lot better today, so I think it's fine. But it's so weird because in this period of time, normally you would just be like, oh, yeah, I'm fine. But you're like, oh, no, my nose is dripping. I have the COVID, you know, and you go straight to that instead of just being like, you have a cold or whatever. So, but I'm being very cautious, and I'm not going places or doing things right now.
how are you doing today, Joy?
You know, I had a busy, crazy day, and I'm ready to wrap up. Except that my new one of the members of the executive leadership team from Merit is headed this way, and I'm like an hour and a half out of town. And he said, "I'll come." So I don't know. I may be fired today, but other than that,
We got you.
We can be a character reference if you need one, because we've known you for like 3 weeks. So
that sounds like a lawsuit. So
Joy, you have shared this journey with a ton of widows over many years, and we are so curious with the things that you have done and what you recommend to others. So, is it typical that widows want to share a legacy of their dead spouse? How common is this?
I think it's really common, or at least that's what I've experienced. And I have learned so much from all the other ladies that I've walk this journey with. They've taught me so many ways to do that I find incredibly fascinating. But I don't know about you guys, but it seemed like in year 2, when everybody had gone back to their normal lives, and I suddenly thought, their lives all got to go back to normal, but mine hasn't. My life has totally shifted. And people are just going to forget him. And I think I continued to feel that way, even leading up to like his 10th anniversary. By the 10th anniversary of his death, I thought, nobody else is even thinking about the fact that it's been 10 years. And I really wanted to do something special to make everybody remember, or to help everybody remember. And so we had a big old poker party and seance, and just a lot of fun stuff to honor him and remember him.
I want to hear about all of this. Please tell us about that. That sounds so interesting and fun.
Mel is mostly wondering about the seance part, though.
I love ghosts. You don't even know. Well, maybe you do, actually.
Well, I'm a pretty spiritual person, but it just seemed fun. I mean, I really, I do believe that some people more than others can connect with the dead. But I had some friends who were kind of freaked out by the seance part. And I was like, well, I was just kind of kidding. It's just, for fun. But it was a great way just to remind them. And the poker part was kind of obvious. The boys always used to play poker together. And so I just wanted them to all come back together and play poker again. And I felt like if money ended up missing from their pot, then we could blame Larry, and I could like stuff money in my pockets the whole night. But I don't know, that part didn't work out so well.
That is so funny. So now you said this was at the 10-year mark. Is that right?
That was kind of a big year for me. And I know that you guys haven't gotten there yet. I was surprised at how long it took me to feel like I was truly myself again. We go through these periods where it's 2 steps up and 3 steps back. And it literally took me 10 years to feel like I was Joy Kirsch again, a totally different Joy, but that I was truly fully me, that my grieving period, I'd gotten through enough of that I felt like I could clearly make decisions, and that I knew who I wanted to be and where I was going.
Wow. We don't know what that's like. Do you remember when we first were talking, Joy, and you said something like, so do you guys, know how it is, like when you kind of come out of the grief after a few years and we're like, what are you talking about? Can you tell us more about that? What is it like? I'm just so fascinated because we're just in a fog, obviously.
Well, you need to take your time, for one thing. People tell you to get over it. And I think more so with women than men, maybe because we tend to spend longer time contemplating things. And so maybe longer in our grief, but it's very important to process. I still remember like 6 months after losing my husband and being told, you need to get over it. You need to get out there and date. You're young, you're beautiful. You don't want to be single. And I thought, what are you talking about? I just buried my husband 6 months ago. So I'm a slow study. I don't think it takes everybody 10 years to feel themselves again, but I do think that transitions like widowhood take longer than most people want to admit. And to do them right, I think we have to give them time.
I'm not sure that's what we wanted to hear, though. I wanted you to be like, oh, it will just take like 5 more minutes, and then you're going to be good. Maybe 8 minutes.
I like having the excuse that I can be really dingy, though, for a really long time.
That's true. That's true.
But people, I hope we don't ever have to quit using that.
I know, right?
Yeah. So, oh my gosh. So Jason got in a car accident when we were married for 5 years. He got hit by a car on his bike. And so he had a traumatic brain injury. And he used to use that forever as an excuse. And at some point in time, I was like, nope, you're done with that excuse. So I kind of feel like that's what people are going to be like to me. Like, nope, you can't use that excuse anymore. It's done. You've used it too much. I hope not,
use it while you can.
I'm going to start telling you, Mel, that you can't use it anymore. I'm going to be the mean widow wife to you, just like I was the mean wife to Jason. It also didn't help that I'm a PT.
You're going to be like, you're 10 full months ahead of me in this journey, so you need to get over it.
Get over it, Mel.
Fine.
Yes.
Again, get out there.
So, Joy, we kind of discussed this in your first podcast with us, but when you started the Widow's Journey group, it was several years after your first husband had died. And that kind of really blew my mind a little bit because I have felt such a rush to do those kinds of things. So when it had taken, several years for that to come to fruition, it made me start thinking about things differently and how the timeline doesn't have to be the same for everybody and how you can give yourself a break. But on the flip side of that, do you think that people are more willing to participate in memorial type activities the sooner to the death that you start them? If you're trying to, say, have a fundraiser, you're trying to, earn enough money to form a scholarship or whatever you want your cause to be, do you think that the friends and family who knew your person are more likely to participate if you do it closer to their death while they're still remembering? 10 years, like you were saying, they were all done. They weren't remembering him anymore. Do you think that you get a better response if you do it sooner?
Yes, in a word, absolutely, because they are more likely to have that emotional connection, which is what makes us give.
I have a question in the same vein too, and maybe this will go along with the same answer to Anita's question. But I know in my husband's case, he was a theater director who's very beloved by the community, and I just felt this responsibility and still feel the responsibility. But more so, like, before I crashed from exhaustion, I just felt I have to keep something going. I have to do this fundraiser. I have to start a nonprofit. I have to do this and this and this. And if I don't, this is the only time that I can do it. And it's going to be over and done. And nobody will care anymore. And everybody will forget about Scott. And Mel, you will have failed. Can you speak to that? And I think that kind of goes along with what Anita is saying. Do you self-care or do you go start a nonprofit? And we can get into the nonprofit later. That's a whole other thing. But
well, and I think a nonprofit is a way to not just provide legacy for our spouses, but in my case, it was about me moving forward. So it's interesting because I hear two different things and I felt two different things too, which is there's this part of me that wanted to honor my husband. And then there's this other part of me that wanted to define who I was going to be going forward. And I knew that looked different because I had had my widowhood experience. And so finding the energy to do a nonprofit literally took me 10 years. But I was very blessed in that I funded that out of my own pocket. Now, some of that was a direct result of the business that I built that I started with my husband, that I don't think I would have had the ability to do if he hadn't been part of my life. So I can certainly give him some credit for that. But if you want to do legacy in his honor, that requires, hosting a golf tournament or doing some other type of fundraising. I think you do have to do that early when people are still feeling that emotional connection, because that is what tends to make us open our purse strings.
That makes a lot of sense, actually. And I think it's all about trying to find the balance, not trying to do something so big right out of the gate that you cause yourself to be exhausted, like Mel said. And I also love the idea that the legacy can be not only for your spouse, but also for you, and how you want to create yourself going forward. But I felt such an immense amount of pressure, just like Mel was saying, to keep his memory alive. And I think a lot of people feel that same intense pressure.
Yeah, and I was going to ask Joy, since you have a lot of experience knowing a lot of widows, what are some ways that you have found widows to be creative but not having to spend all their energy honoring somebody? And maybe it's not a legacy at a certain point in their widowhood journey, maybe it's like a little memorial thing or just something that requires less energy. What are some ideas?
Yeah, that's a great question, because there are definitely things we can do that don't create as much, that don't require as much energy, right? We can gift, for example, to the hospital that may be involved, or to the hospice group that may be involved. We can give to the American Heart Association, or Survivors of Suicide, or Alzheimer's Association as a one-time gift. And writing a check does not require as much energy as starting a nonprofit or setting up a golf tournament. But what if maybe instead of starting a golf tournament, we attend another one that exists already that raises money for the American Heart Association, and we put together a team of 4 and we raise money in honor of our beloved through that effort, which is a lot less involved as trying to set up the nonprofit and do the golf tournament yourself, for example.
Oh, that's a great idea. As we know, we're humans, and so we like to think in black and white terms, but life is really gray in reality. And so I think that's so helpful, because it could take elements of that thing that may take all your energy, and it resembles it a little bit, but it's not as hard on you, and it still is for a good cause, and it's still helping to promote a legacy. So I really like those ideas.
I think, first of all, talk about gray. Don't we, as widows, live in the gray? Absolutely. But I think that when you get to a point of wanting to start your own nonprofit and change the world, that actually better be more about you and your passion than honoring your husband and or his passions. Because those kind of things don't just require time and money and brain power, but they're an ongoing commitment. So it better be something that lights your fire and makes you passionate. And we're seeing that already, for example, with this podcast. This is really because you were widowed that it was created, but it's because you're passionate about making a difference in other widows' lives that makes this something that's viable on an ongoing basis, I think.
Ooh, that's so wise. Oh,
I know. It's how we can be disasters, but still help people, hopefully.
Exactly, because aren't we all disasters at this point?
With a nonprofit, you have to have a board, right? It's a big, involved sort of a thing. And when I got to that point, yeah, tax returns, and like you have to get a tax ID, and then you have to give bank accounts. And so it's like, while it can be something that's very worthy, a worthy cause, it is a big commitment and investment. So yeah, I think it's really great that you have experience with that as well as the other stuff too. So what are some things that you've noticed with other widows with creating their legacy?
Oh, I want to tell you some of the really fun ones that have come up over the years. I brought my little list. Let me go pull it out, because there's some great things. And if you have kids, which, Anita, it's different, I think, and I'd love to hear you and Mel talk about this, but do you find it different in wanting to create this ongoing memory for your children that has to look somehow different than your memory of your husband?
yes and no. So I feel a tremendous amount of pressure, even tremendous-er amount of pressure, to keep my husband's memory alive, or my kids, their dad's memory alive for them. And that is very heavy. And it's different than keeping his memory alive for others, because for others, it's more just keeping him in their head. Do you know what I'm saying? Like remembering that he existed. For my kids, I want them to remember who he was, how he treated them, the specific memories that they had together, because they're in my sphere, they will remember that he existed, right? Because I will be affected, and therefore they will also be affected because he was part of their day-to-day life. But it's heartbreaking to know that for my younger kids, they will not have any memories of their dad that are their own. I can implant them, I've been told, and they will understand and recognize pictures and things like that, but not remember vacations and things like that. So very early on, that was one of my biggest stressors. And I found every photo of each kid that he had with them, and I made them memory books that they can look through. And the funny thing is that they mean so much to me. And my kids at this point in time in their life, they're like, okay, great. And then they don't really spend a lot of time looking through those. I think that may or may not change as they get older, but I felt like it was my responsibility to make sure those were done. And it took hours and hours and hours creating those because I needed them to have those, even though they may or may not care. I hope they do care one day, but I'm not in control of them, unfortunately, sometimes.
So you touch on something that I thought a lot about after my husband died, because we didn't have children. And I regretted that to some degree, because your children are a legacy of your husband, right? The ultimate legacy. And so I was sad that didn't happen. And yet there was another part of me that was so relieved that I didn't have to worry about someone else's grief besides my own. So that sounds really selfish, but I was wise enough to know that it took all that I had just to get myself through that.
I don't know what it was like for you, Joy, but I know for me, I remember laying in my bed being so sad and just recognizing like, okay, Scott's dead. There will be no children to be passed on from him. But on the other hand, I could not imagine at that time having to emotionally and physically and mentally deal with that. So it's like Anita and I kind of are in super opposite positions with those things just because of our life circumstance. So
I think you guys just described widowhood, though, in a bubble. There's so much of like, yes, that push and pull. Like, I'm so sad that we didn't have kids, and I'm so thankful we didn't have kids. Like, that's a lot of being a widow. Like, I'm so sad this, I'm so happy. At the same time,
Yes.
it doesn't make any sense a lot. And I feel like it's always that, you know, like,
Have
yes.
the topic for our next podcast.
yay!
So I find it interesting because it wasn't my experience because I didn't have kids, but I live vicariously through my friends who do, and they're always walking this fine line as they progress through their grief. They're walking this fine line of, how do I still honor my husband's memory for my children, but allow myself to move forward and perhaps date again or get in another relationship? And how do I protect that memory while still letting them know that perhaps I can love again? That's a huge other issue that, again, that will have to be our next podcast. But I would love to tell our peeps out there about some of the wonderful things that our widows have come up with. So I want to share some of the things that they do for their young children that I just think are fabulous. I don't know if y'all have seen the little build a memory bear that use dad's clothes. Have you seen those?
We have them. We have a few of them, and they're adorable. They really are cute.
I think that's such a good idea. I think when you Google how to memorialize someone, that's one of the top two things that comes up, like that and quilts, right?
Yes. And quilts have been great choices too, where they used dad's clothes to build one. And thank goodness for Google. It gives us so many good ideas that we might not have on our own. And it tells us where we can get them. So do you want me to do some shout outs to some people that we've used in the past, or would it be better to just count on Google to do that for us?
Please tell us where we can find these people and what they do, and let's support them.
So Tammy Hendricks at tammybears.com is one of the ones we've used in the past, and she's just made the cutest little bears with dad's clothes. And I love the ones that have like the little golf hats on them if dad was a golfer, or maybe they look like the career if dad was a fireman or a policeman. I think those are just so cute. You said that you guys have used them before, Anita. What did you do with your little Build-A-Bears?
Ours came from, I think her name is Carrie Bears, actually. And my neighbor knows her, and so she commissioned them. And it's kind of funny because when she asked me to give her some shirts of Jason's, I just assumed that she wanted T-shirts, and it turns out that that's not what she wanted, and it probably would have been better had I used some different material, but that's just my brain just went there, and nobody told me otherwise, so that's what we have.
Okay, so my friends are always asking, what can we do for other friends who have been widowed? And my answer will be specific. If you want to do a Build-A-Bear for your friend and you want dad's shirts, ask for the kind of shirts you want. Don't just assume that when you say shirts, your widowed friend who is totally out of her brain will know what the heck you're talking about. So thank you for that tip.
Thank you for coming. You may leave now. Just kidding, not really.
That was Anita's TED Talk.
I know that the lady who did mine has a podcast, and she actually has written a book called Something to Hold, and she tells a bunch of stories of the bears she has made for people and like the tragic deaths of people and babies and kids and
oh my gosh, that's amazing. Okay, what are some other things, Joy?
Well, I like the quilt idea because it works for kids of all ages and it works for multiple kids. So the other thing I like about quilts is that when we're missing our honey and when they're missing their daddy, what a great thing to cuddle up with. And that's really what we're missing so often is that touch, that cuddling, right? So
this one's funny because Jason has been gone for a year and 3/4, and it took me until just a couple weeks ago before I was ready to part with his t-shirts to make a quilt. So I just want to put that out there because I think people feel pressure to do that kind of thing, and I wasn't ready to get his shirts out of the closet. So it took me that long to be able to take them physically out of the closet and hand them to somebody, because in the back of my head I just kept thinking like he needs these. I can't get rid of him. Like he'd be mad at me because I can't get rid of his stuff. He might need it. Kind of that nonsensical thinking that logically makes no sense. But in your heart, you feel like you're not ready to part with that. So we're having our quilts made right now. FYI.
I think also because we live in Instagram culture, everything is like right now. And if it's relevant for 1 week, maybe 2 weeks, maybe 24 hours. And so I'm wondering, Joy, this, you may or may not observe this, I don't know. Do you notice these days versus when Larry died, do you feel like people are more in a rush these days just because of social culture to get stuff done? Or does it seem kind of the same no matter what?
Well, that's an excellent question because certainly culture has changed because of social media and instant gratification. But I think that society has always put pressure on the widow to get on with it. I don't think that's changed, but I'd also like to address that we put pressure on ourselves. So I like to talk about the widow who is the ostrich versus the widow who is the roadrunner. And we know that we both have aspects of both. There's days that we want to just pull the covers over our heads and make the world stop. And then there's those days where we have this maddening desire to get everything off our list so that we can stop grieving, like you were talking about earlier, Anita, and just be able to, okay, I want this to last for 4 minutes and then I want it to be done with. And that irony is perfectly captured in your story, Anita, of not wanting to give away Jason's shirts, because I remember going in the closet and wrapping myself in Larry's clothing and just smelling it and feeling it on me. Have you guys done that stuff?
I'm wearing Jason's sweatshirt right now. So, because it just got cold here and I wanted a big sweatshirt, and he was so, it's kind of funny. I put it on, I'm like, holy cow, you were so much bigger than me, which we joked about when he was alive, because when I was like super duper pregnant, I'd be like, hey, I'm going to borrow a shirt. And I was like, you're even bigger than me when I'm pregnant. Just because he was a big, like not a fat guy, but just a big solid guy. So yes, to answer your question.
Also, yes, for me too. Scott and I didn't have a lot of time together, but he did have a hoodie that we got on our honeymoon. And so ever since he died, I didn't take that thing off for a couple months. I slept in it, laid in it. Yeah, those things are important because you want to preserve any smell or any memory or any sort of feeling that you think might even transfer from the clothes to you, like it's a hug or something.
And I think that's what this whole conversation is about. This legacy is about keeping their memories alive in all these different ways. I have a cherished keychain. And this was actually given to me by one of my besties. All right, my bestie, after my dad died. So she found something that had his actual handwriting on it. And she put together from all these different cards, it says, "I love you" from Dad. And I carry it on my keychain and I still tear up whenever I see it. It's so lovely.
That is the best part about Etsy these days, is that you can find people that do all sorts of stuff. Right before Jason died, his mom passed away in 2008, I'm pretty sure. And my sister-in-law gave him a tie. I don't know what it is. Like, it holds your tie in place, and it had his mom's signature on it. And that was a really cool thing that he has no use for anymore, but was really sweet when they gave it to him. Go Etsy.
Now you can stab someone with it, Anita.
It's not sharp.
Become a weapon. So my Etsy vendor was named Mackenzie Treasure, and that was with the MACKENZIE. That was the Etsy vendor who did she did both jewelry, but this was a cute keychain. And apparently there are some tie tacks too that can be made into weapons. Who knew?
This is not, you cannot weaponize this. It looks just like a paper clip thing. It's not, you can't weaponize
I
this.
bet somebody now has figured it out. Maybe they can put ashes in it or something.
Oh, well, I've seen the little amulets that you wear around your neck that have ashes in them. Those are interesting, but I do want to tell you about a very artistic gift that I've seen done using ashes, where they're made. Have y'all seen these? They're made into these really artistic, if I can use that word again. They're like orbs, so you can use them for paperweights, and you can and they'll swirl the ashes throughout them. It sounds a little creepy, but they really are beautiful. And they do them in different colors, and you can also make them into jewelry. I always laughed when I heard that we could make our ashes into jewelry, and I thought, well, I want to be a 5-carat diamond, but maybe that would mean I had a little too many ashes and I should be shooting for a smaller diamond.
And it would take like 1,000,000 years for you to become a diamond too. So your legacy would be gone by then.
Maybe dinosaurs would come back by then. It's like one of those things where you don't think about it until you have a dead person. And maybe if you do hear about it and you don't have a dead person, you're like, ew, gross. Really? Like they're ashes and the thing. But now that Scott's gone, for me, we buried him. We did not cremate him. But I know our friend Liz from Australia, she has those necklaces for her kids and for her, where they put some of her husband in the necklaces. And I was like, oh my gosh, that would be so cool. I wish I had that of Scott, because Scott's like in the ground, dead. Gone.
All right, let's talk about that, because there is a way. Well, I mean, it's a way to allow him to be in the ground and still be with you. I think you're right. We talk about a lot of things that might sound morbid to people who haven't lost their spouses, but when you have, you're like, okay, well, yeah, that's normal. So spiritpieces.com is where you can get the orbs, and they do the jewelry. And I was on their website last night and I saw they have this really neat new biodegradable urn that they will put the ashes in, and you order this tree that gets planted in that same biodegradable urn. So as the urn is breaking down, the ashes mix with the compost of the tree, and bada bing, bada boom, now Scott becomes a tree in the yard.
I've heard of these, and I think it's such a cool idea.
Yeah.
I have a question about it, though.
What?
Are there any, like, rules about that? Are you allowed to bury your ashes anywhere you want.
Does anybody have to know?
I don't know. I'm just like, do you?
I'm pretty sure you could do whatever you want.
Well, you can't bury your actual husband in your front yard. That's definitely against the law.
But in ash form, who's going to find out?
I don't know. I'm just curious. I think it's cool.
Personal property, it's okay. And it's just probably not okay to take it to, public property without, you can't maybe bury your husband's ashes in a park. To let the tree grow there, it would have to be on your own property. But I'm kind of like Mel. I'm like, let's ask for forgiveness instead of permission on these things, right?
Have you guys heard that this is total, I don't know if this is true or just rumor, but at the Haunted Mansion at Disneyland, they have a real problem with people dumping their dead people ashes.
What?
When you're waiting in line for the ride, they have like a cemetery there, and they have people who are always trying to sneak their dead people's ashes.
Oh my God.
Okay, you want to know what I would do if I wanted to get around that and not get caught? I would pretend I was a smoker.
You can't smoke in Disneyland.
But I would pretend.
Okay.
And then I would have, quote, ashes.
Okay, so wait,
real
you get arrested for smoking instead of dropping somebody's ashes.
Yeah, because I feel like getting arrested for smoking would be much more acceptable than the ash situation.
Mel is getting banned from life from Disneyland next time we go.
And I don't even care because I'm a widow, and so I care about zero things except my dogs.
Oh, okay. So that's cool. You can make. I've actually thought about planting a tree for Jason, and actually at his school, right outside his classroom, they planted a tree for him.
Oh,
so there's one at the school. Hopefully it survives. But then there's a little plaque that says Mr. Coyle, which it's hard to think that the kids coming through the school now have no reference to him because he's been gone for long enough that most of them are, they weren't there when he was there, and that is heartbreaking.
I do love the idea of the life blooming out of the result of the dead situation. It's kind of cool, like with duality, like that whole duality that we deal with grief. It's so poetic in a way. Mm-hmm. You could probably plant whatever you want, right? Even if it's not a tree. What are some other ideas?
Yeah, like a little more intense than just a tree, but something that could be ongoing would be a community garden.
Ooh.
So then you could every year have people come and be involved in that.
So this is coming out of the realm of kind of the easy and going into the realm of ongoing and maybe requiring more effort, time, brain power, money.
Exactly. So I know of one woman in Dallas, for example, who created an entire park. So she organized the workers, she bought the tree, she bought the equipment for the children to play on. And then they had this big couple of days where everybody came together and then created this whole park. That is a bigger effort, but certainly an ongoing legacy that you will see many people enjoy, not just the people in your immediate family or not just the people at the school like you did, Anita, or the school did.
Wow. That would be a lot of effort, but that would be cool because it would stick around. At a lot of the parks and along a lot of the trails around here, there's people have put benches, and I don't know exactly how you go about doing that, but there's a lot of benches that will say, like, in memory of so-and-so. I guess you would contact, like, your parks department to figure out how to donate those in places like that.
Yeah, like they'll even have paver stones where you can do that. I know with Scott's Theater, you can donate a theater seat in somebody's name. And so some people do that. But back to the park thing. So Scott's from Boise. And so I was introduced to Albertson Park, which is basically a nature preserve by the people that started the Albertson chain, the grocery store chain. And it's huge. I mean, obviously they had a ton of money, but I guess the Mrs. Albertson was really a big nature lover. And so it was like a gift in honor of her as well as a whole community. And it's like, I don't know this Albertson lady, but anytime I go to that park, I think of her. So that's kind of a way that complete strangers, if you have tons of money, if you want to start a whole park or a nature
Yeah.
preserve. I like that. It's evergreen in a way.
Well, and what a great way for her family to come together and honor her because that was something that she loved. So, do you ever think about for Scott, for example, there are a lot of things you could do that obviously are big money, like endowing a scholarship where someone could become a really great theater student. But maybe you could just also donate some clothes to one particular production or just do an ad in the paper that would promote that. What kind of ideas do you have, Mel, on honoring him through theater?
Well, it's interesting that we're talking about this now because at the time of this recording, I'm about a week and a half out from his third death anniversary. And so I think this episode will come out like 3 days after that. So it's gotten the juices flowing in my head. I'm like, oh, maybe I should do something. Because I kind of went from I have to do all the things to then I crashed and had all sorts of crazy things to now I'm just doing nothing because I have no energy. And so this is giving me a lot of good ideas. One thing I was thinking about, because originally Scott and I, when he was alive, we had talked to some people at the theater about how can we pool our ideas and our creative resources to help kids in theater. Because with Scott's experience, he has noticed in his own life and also in the lives of a ton of other people that it's served as a form of therapy. And acting has really helped people to become comfortable with themselves, to learn that they have a voice, to interact with other people. And so that was his passion. And then I'm, of course, on the musician side where I'm a teacher as well. And my passion is giving kids confidence, because really that's all people really need is confidence. And then they can connect the dots and like do their thing. So my main goal, it's like, well, my big, huge goal, it's like, it would be great to have a scholarship or to have a program where it could be called like Scott Montgomery Foundation or something. And we could help continue that tradition of kids gaining confidence and therefore contributing in their own little worlds and as they get older, bigger worlds. But right now, what I was kind of thinking as we were talking is, would it be cool if some of his friends just sent like a 1-minute clip of them singing their favorite song that reminds them of Scott, or just their favorite theater song, and then I could edit them together, which is, for me, that's not a lot of effort because I do it all day long. But then we could have a little mini online concert, and it's in Scott's name. It's something that I don't have to physically go and do for people, but they can just send me their stuff, and I'll edit it together. And that way it can keep his memory going, but I can still do it from my basement, if that makes sense.
So Mel, you talking about that, I was actually thinking about this earlier. In the Widow Wives Club, there have been some questions about, it's my death anniversary is coming up, or his or her birthday is coming up. What ideas do you have for those kind of things? And I was thinking about how COVID has changed that, because now we can't have big gatherings, we can't have big parties. And I think to some extent that's been a hard thing, but I think it's also been a little bit liberating and kind of a good thing too, because we can maybe take our expectations down a little bit and allow people to participate through social media and kind of the online sphere, and they can do it when it's good for them. So I was just thinking about ideas for that, and you just shared the perfect one, have people think of what your person loved to do, what they were good at. So for Jason's birthday, the first year we got together and did a bike ride, but the second year, since it was COVID, I just asked people to send me a picture of them on their own bike ride, and we did a virtual bike ride where people weren't actually gathering. So I think that social media has made it a lot easier for us to come together, even not in the physical sense, but coming together to remember the person. And like the idea of poker, if that's what your husband loved to do, if that's what Larry loved, then you do poker. If Scott was in theater, you do theater. Jason loved to bike and swim, so we did that. And whatever your loved one, whatever was their thing, I've seen people just say, take a picture or take a video of you dancing with somebody you love and submit that to us and things like that. And I think that that's a nice way to celebrate without coming physically together. Sorry, that was long.
You know what else I love too? When I was first trying to figure out the nonprofit situation, I went to an attorney because there's like the tax part and then there's the legal part too. And the person we were talking to was not very supportive. He's like, well, what do you want to accomplish with this nonprofit? And so I was telling him, he's like, well, why don't you just find another person that does the same thing? And I'm like, what? Whatever. Then fast forward, and I went out to New York before I ended up moving out there, and I watched how my friend ran her nonprofit. And I told her staff the situation, and they go, you can do anything you want. Like, you just figure it out. You say, oh, I want to figure out how to do this, and then you find a way to make it happen. So that's a bigger scale, of course, than these things like a first-year death anniversary or a birthday. But it's like you can really actually be creative. If you have an idea, kind of think of the vein of that idea, and maybe not all of the elements will work, but maybe half of them will work, and then you can make it so that it actually works for you and your energy level and your situation.
I think what other upside of this stress of COVID that we have is everything y'all are describing creates something permanent for you, the widow, to hang on to, right? After the event has happened, if it were a bike ride, it would just be over. But by sending you pictures or by making this recording of everyone, you've got this permanent legacy for you that is an ongoing living thing. I love that.
I hadn't even thought of that. So that's true too.
Now, Joy, I have a question because you are the fancy money lady. Will you talk to us a little bit about tax benefits and donations and how that works in the financial world?
Yes, I would love to do my fancy part, but I do have to ask before we move on. Where does deathiversary come from? We call that the angelversary.
I made it up.
Oh, okay. Well, we made a anniversary too, but I don't know. I think I don't want to focus on the death so much as the life.
I've heard that too, and we've heard lots of people use different terminology, and in some of like the grief groups I belong to, some people have talked about that, how they would rather focus on birthdays or anniversaries instead of the day that they died, the day, days that were important to them while they were alive. And my personal feeling is that just we're going to celebrate every single date that we can. So we're going to celebrate, in quotes, death anniversary, birthday, all of the other obscure holidays, all of them.
And also, we're so dark humor that it might not be as morbid sounding to us as to other people. I have been into like true crime and detective things since I was 9 years old, so I kind of am desensitized. So I apologize to anybody that is maybe offended by my choice of words.
I'm surprised you don't call it like the punkiversary or something else. Hey, that my life changed and I did not appreciate that. So now ask me that question again about the tax benefits, and you asked it so beautifully.
Thank you. So Joyce, since you are the fancy lady and you know all the things about finance, will you explain to us a little bit about donations and tax exemptions and how those things come into play with donating or honoring a legacy?
Well, sure. I will do my fancy part. It's changed in the last couple of years because we've actually gotten higher standard deductions. Now, as single ladies, we get a standard deduction of a little over $12,000. I think it's $12,200. So your charitable gift, in order for it to give you a tax benefit, has to be part of your itemized deductions that are bigger than $12,200 that you would get automatically. So that's all a lot of just tax talk. But basically, if you're just giving away his clothes, for example, you're probably not going to get any tax deduction for that anymore. So
whatever, he had some really expensive belts, $12,000 belts.
Well, then in that case, you're probably going to want to make sure you get that itemized deduction. Or the other thing, what if he had a $10,000 belt? Maybe you want to group all of the charitable gifts in the same year so that you can, instead of losing that $10,000 deduction, you can put it together with all your other charitable deductions to get you over that $12,200. And remember, this is a Schedule A deduction, which means you get to combine it with your interest on your house, your state and local taxes that are now capped at $10,000. So there are other things that you get to combine with your charitable deduction to get you over that $12,200. Also, if you are over 72, up from age 70, now new part of our tax law is that we get to defer our required minimum distributions from our IRA accounts until age 72. And if you donate those directly to a charity, you can avoid paying taxes on that as well. So there's the fancy answer.
I feel like my dad should come down and translate.
That's exactly what I was just going to say.
Oh my gosh, Anita.
He would love this so much.
You have to tell Joy about my dad's conversation with you. My dad, the CPA, Joy.
Yes, I remember.
The other day I was at Mel's house after we did our widow bingo, and we were talking about something, and I said something about what somebody was doing with their money, and he was like, "That's wrong." and then he proceeded to tell me like why it was wrong, and I was like, "I don't know what you're talking about," but he talked to me about it for a long time. And by the time we got done, I'm pretty sure that we were seeing eye to eye about what it was, but it was kind of a little bit on the same vein that you were just saying, because he was talking about like how you shouldn't gift your house to somebody because it will get taxed at a higher rate than if they inherit it. But I was like, we're not talking about a house. We're talking about like a car and your, all of your stupid little things. But he's like, say you own an orchard. And I'm like, but I don't own an orchard.
Oh my gosh,
say you own rental properties. I don't own rental properties, So it was just kind of funny. And Mel just left. She left me there.
Listen.
To fend for myself.
I just thought he needed to bond with you, Anita, and you him.
So, Joy, can I just see if I understand what you just said? Because that was a lot of gobbledy techno speak. So, for a regular, normal person, you have to donate enough money with your other deductions that you get for stuff like owning property and healthcare expenses and things like that. And it has to be more than $12,200. Otherwise, you're going to be better off taking the standard deduction. Was that correct?
Perfectly, Anita. I don't know why you call that gobbledygook. My public didn't say it as eloquently as you did.
So the point is unless you are donating a large sum of money, it probably isn't going to help you with your taxes, basically.
Correct.
Okay. But, I mean, that's good to know, because I would guess that for most people, they're not doing this for tax purposes. They're doing it for their heart and for what they feel like they need to do to heal. So it's not really to, trick the government. And this all doesn't apply if you don't live in the United States of America. Go find your own tax information if you live somewhere else. Good luck with that.
Small asterisk. Yes. Footnotes, etc. Absolutely. For those of our listening audience who do want to take advantage of tax deductions or are in that blessed place, then there's a couple of ways to do it. I mean, you can donate things and take it on your annual tax return, but sometimes there are windfalls because of our husband's deaths, right? Life insurance policies, property that we inherit. And in cases like that, there's sometimes a big excess amount of cash where you're in a position that probably not immediately, but eventually you recognize I have more than enough. And to me, that's when we've really accomplished financial success. I'm not talking about life success, but financial success, when we can look at our situation and say, I have more than enough to be okay. So what should I do with my excess? And that is a great time to be thinking about legacy, whether it's in your husband's name or in your family's name or in your own name. Great time to be thinking about legacy. And when you have a large amount to gift and you don't quite know what you want to do with it, but are driven by tax purposes to take advantage of an immediate tax deduction, that's where a couple of other things come into play that I'd like to talk about. And that would be
We're so excited.
donor advice. I know. I know. I can see your eyes glazing over. You're going to call me Mr. Shore here
It's
in a
because
minute.
we just talked about schedule. When I saw Schedule A, I was like, oh no.
Not that. Not that. He's back. He's taking over her body.
What is that you would like to talk about, Joy?
So, donor advice funds and foundations. So, foundations are really powerful tools. And typically, if you have $250,000 or more, $1 million or more, you're going to want to set up your own foundation. And the beauty of doing a foundation or a donor advice fund, which is kind of the poor man's foundation, which means less than $250,000 usually, is that you don't have to decide where you're going to give it right away. You can make your charitable donation, you can get your tax donation, but you don't have to give away all the money at once. So if you got a big old chunk of money and you want to be able to give it over your lifetime, that's when you would use a donor advice fund or a foundation.
How do you get a donor advice fund? I don't even know what that is. I've never heard of it till right now. Probably because I tuned out my dad.
Yeah, your dad probably told you about it and you just ignored him.
No, probably because you got no life insurance, so nobody needed to tell you about it.
I know.
You know what? Me either. I didn't get any life insurance.
I will send Jason to kick Larry in the shins. That's his job, is to kick all the dead husbands who didn't have life insurance in their shins.
It's a good thing he's such a strong guy because he has a lot of butt kicking to do for a lot of guys.
Yeah. But he's bigger than a pregnant woman, so I'm not worried about that.
So what is that?
Donor advice funds are typically set up by mutual fund companies so that you are able to invest your money with them. And then they have this whole framework set up where you can tell them every year, this is who I want a piece of my money to go to. So I have a donor advice fund, for example, and every year I get to go in and say, okay, take this amount and send it to KERA, take this amount and send it to my alma mater, the University of Dallas, take this amount and send it to the Widow's Journey, which I do every year. So I can spread out the gift over multiple years instead of having to write just one big check to one or two charities, for example.
So, Joy, correct me if I'm wrong, but if you do find yourself in a position where you feel like you can be gifting large sums of money, would this be a good time to find a financial advisor who can help you know the ins and outs of these acronyms and tax thingies so that you can do the best job and make the most difference?
Well, I think absolutely this is not the kind of thing to try and go alone. But the good news is there are trained people out there, and there are trained people who really have a heart for widows and can help you with that. So yes, a financial advisor who's trained in widow issues is an excellent place to start. I'd also recommend, if you're looking at large ongoing gifts and maybe don't have history in that, you may want to work with your community foundation. Almost every city has a communities foundation. In Dallas, we have two because we are a big city. But you can go to your communities foundation and they will help you determine how to gift, the best way to use your money, and how to get that set up. So all you have to do is come with your goals and your heart, and they will really walk you through that. So communities foundations are their own foundation. Some people prefer to set up a family foundation. So instead of using the community of Dallas, they would set up their own family foundation. The beauty of doing that is you have total control. You can actually even hire members of your family to work in the foundation. So a lot of people go that route when they want more control and they want to be able to give more of their corpus or that principal on an annual basis. There's just a lot more flexibility in using a foundation, but typically a little more expensive and complicated to run because you have to file a tax return every year and you have to set up the legal forms. So they get more complex.
So you run, obviously, a nonprofit. Will you tell us how involved it is, and as far as like having board members and board meetings and all that stuff, what how much time do you spend? I know it's probably different all the time. How much time-ish do you spend on it per week or per month? Or what are the hard parts about it other than everything?
It's only hard if you don't love it. So I will tell you that being a certified financial planner gives me a lot of skills, and running my own business also gives me a lot of skills that I've been able to transfer over to the nonprofit. I knew how to set up a corporation. I know how to file tax returns, and until you make $50,000 or more through your nonprofit, you just file what's called a postcard return. You don't even have to file a full tax return. You just fill out this little postcard that says we made less than $50,000. So that's really easy until your nonprofit becomes fairly large. A nonprofit is just like a regular corporation, except its sole purpose is to not make any money. But it would just be like forming any other business.
Joy, can I ask you another question? It's very serious.
No.
Okay.
She's over it.
You just turned your camera a little bit, and so I see that you have a skull on the back on your wall behind you. Are you required to have one of those on your wall if you live in Texas, or do they kick you out?
Is it a steer? A steer skull?
It's like a longhorn skull.
I don't think it's a longhorn because they're not longhorn.
No.
It's not, it's a short
It's
one.
a short horn. Duh, Mel.
Right.
But do you have to have that to live in Texas?
Usually on the front of your truck.
I thought it was a Cadillac.
With spurs on your boots?
And a rifle in the window of your truck too. And you have to only drive that truck with your rifle and your longhorns when you're drinking a beer.
These things all sound like a terrible idea.
That's all you need to be a Texan. Yes. So, well, when I pointed that out earlier that I wasn't down in the basement today, Mel said something about the dead guy on my wall. And I said, well, that's not my dead guy, but yes, we are here to honor dead guys. So why not?
I missed that part. That's when I was tardy, I guess.
Yeah, you were showering or something. I don't know.
Joy, I appreciate you so much. I know Anita does too, being with us. And I think the thing that I have learned the most over the 3 episodes is get a competent financial advisor, because there's a whole lot that I don't understand, but you've helped us. So thank you.
I think, wow, I don't even like the idea of thinking that we're wrapping up here, because I have learned so much from you ladies too. Y'all are fabulous. And if that is what has come out of this, is that people know to find a good, competent financial advisor who loves widows and will take care of them, then that is all good. You don't have to be an expert in everything. You just have to put one foot in front of the other and get through this on your own terms. We're talking about legacy. Let's talk about a way that one of your widows might be able to create some legacy in honor of Widow We Do Now or Widow Wives. There's a Patreon level, right?
We have 4 levels of our Patreon.
Tell us more.
So we have the widow friend, and then we have the widow bestie, and the widow wife, and then we just added the dead husband, which is the most supportive level. So if you feel like you would like to contribute to keeping Widow We Do Now going as part of the legacy of your late spouse, we wouldn't argue with that reasoning at all.
The Widow Friend is $5 a month, which helps us with operating costs like internet hosting and things like that. And then the Widow Bestie is the $10 level, and that includes helping us pay for hosting and the nuts and bolts of the podcast, in addition to you get a shout out in episode. And then the Widow Wife is a lot of things.
You get a Q&A. You can input on topics for the podcast, and then we also give you behind the scenes videos every so often, and you get to see us with terrible hair and our messy houses. Well, at least for me, that's true.
And there are new videos in there every week, and they're fun. So we've been having a lot of fun with that.
Yeah, and a lot of them are me yelling at my kids, so that's fun too.
Eventually, there's going to be a ringtone of Anita yelling at her kids, "I'm recording a podcast, go away!" I just have to learn how to make one.
Which happened during this podcast too, by the way.
It totally did. And then the dead husband is all of that, plus you get a t-shirt, Plus, you get requests into what music I put under the Patreon shout out. So you can say, I want a techno beat. And I'm like, okay, cool. Your request is granted, dead husband. So a little bit more input into the creative process of the podcast.
Man, those are all worthy of a donation, even if it's from your foundation or your donor advised fund.
Ooh, we need some rich widows.
Yeah. We need you.
And Oprah.
Maybe when we add a fifth tier, it'll just be called Oprah.
I love that so much. Joy, thank you so much for joining us again and imparting your emeritus widow wisdom with us. We really appreciate it. We've had a great time with you. We hope our audience has learned something new and has learned some new terms and maybe has an idea of what they want to do to honor their spouse's legacy. Remember to check out the Widow Wives Club, answer all the questions, and also if you want to create a legacy by donating to our Patreon, rad, we're all for that. And until our next episode, I'm Anita.
I'm Mel.
And I'm the fancy lady.
Only one step below Oprah.
And we're just two young widows and another widow who could totally talk with Jim Shore for hours and hours. And we're trying to figure out what do we do now?
This is my favorite thing to discuss with you.
Tell me, what is it?
One of my favorite things. I do enjoy tacos and cheese and dogs. This is about how you cannot pay hundreds and hundreds of dollars for a phone plan, especially when you're a widow, your person is dead, you might have kids, you might need another option, and you just want your phone to work, you want unlimited texting and service, and you want it to be like $25 a month.
It blows my mind that they have plans that start at $15 a month. That is so cheap. And the cool thing is it uses other 5G networks, and so you don't have to pay extra for that, and you still get great service.
Yep, Anita and I have traveled all over, and I have used my phone. So I highly recommend it, and my mom's even on it. When my dad died, we put his phone down to the cheapest plan, which is $15 a month. And I think my mom's on the $20 a month plan, and it's so worth it. It's so much cheaper than what we were all paying before. So I highly recommend it if you're on a budget or not. Who cares? Ryan Reynolds is in charge of the company, and they send you free stickers with Ryan Reynolds temporary tattoos. It's kind of the best. So if somebody wants to sign up, what can they do, Anita?
Go to trymintmobile.com/WWDN. Seriously, you guys, such a great idea. Save yourself some money.
And if you're worried about losing data or having any changes with your phone, not going to happen. They walk you through it. Everything's fine. It's the easiest process of all time. Again, that's
trymintmobile.com/WWDN.